It all began with a flash of light that split the sky, brighter than anything humanity had ever seen. It was as if the heavens themselves had been torn apart. Within hours, the entire world knew. The Sharkan fleet had arrived. Governments scrambled to respond, mobilizing armies, fleets, and intelligence agencies, but it was already too late. The first wave of the invasion was swift and merciless. Earth's orbital defense systems, built to protect against asteroid impacts and minor threats, were no match for the overwhelming firepower of the alien fleet. The Sharkan warships, with their sleek obsidian hulls and glowing blue energy shields, were like nothing humans had ever seen. Their weapons decimated satellite stations with casual ease, severing all communication between Earth's major governments. Any military response was crushed before it even began. News outlets broadcasted the chaos unfolding across major cities. In the streets of New York, Paris, Moscow, and Beijing, people stood frozen, gazing up at the sky, unable to comprehend the horror descending upon them. The atmosphere was thick with panic. Fear turned to disbelief. How could this happen? Who were these invaders? And what did they want? On Earth's surface, people saw what could only be described as colossal shadowy figures, giant ships with jagged edges and enormous engines that hummed ominously. The alien ships tore through Earth's atmosphere like a hot knife through butter, leaving behind trails of flame and destruction in their wake. General Emma Kincaid, commander of Earth's Global Defense Command, was one of the first to react. As the largest cities were evacuated under military direction, Kincaid stood before a massive holographic map, her mind racing. The communications blackout meant that all tactical responses had to be localized. There was no time for coordination between the countries. Every world leader was on their own. In the White House, President Claire Raylan addressed the nation, though her voice was tense and her words hardly reassuring. The United States stands ready to defend this world. We will fight. We will stand strong. Humanity will not be brought to its knees. But even she could feel the hollow weight of her own words. How could they stand against this? Their military forces were equipped with cutting-edge weapons, but nothing that could compare to the alien ships that now hovered above Earth's cities. The first confrontation happened in the skies over Washington, D.C., as a squadron of human fighter jets launched a counterstrike. The Sharkan effortlessly neutralized them, their energy shields deflecting missile after missile. The jets fell from the sky like leaves in autumn. The pilot's last thoughts filled with disbelief. In the command center, Kincaid slammed her fist on the table. "We have to do something. We cannot allow them to land." "Ma'am, there's nothing we can do," one of her advisors said, voice shaky. "We're outmatched." For the first time, the unthinkable began to sink in. The invaders were not only superior in technology, they seemed to have an air of inevitability about them. Their fleet moved with such precision, and their attacks were calculated. No, this wasn't just a military conflict. This was something far more terrifying. The Sharkan didn't simply invade Earth. They'd come to conquer. Kincaid, however, wasn't ready to accept defeat. She leaned in, her voice cold and determined. "Then we fight." As Earth's capital cities burned and the invaders prepared to land their ground forces, one thought lingered in Kincaid's mind. They may have the technology, but humanity has something they don't: our will to survive. In the aftermath of the first devastating wave of the Sharkan invasion, Earth was left reeling. For the first time in recorded history, humanity faced a threat so immense that it seemed as though all hope was lost. Yet, in the darkest hours, when survival seemed a distant dream, a spark of defiance ignited. General Emma Kincaid, now working with the fractured remnants of Earth's military forces, refused to surrender. In secret underground bunkers, former military officers, engineers, and scientists convened, their minds focused on the impossible task ahead: how to fight back against a force so advanced that their weapons made Earth's finest seem like children's toys. The initial approach was simple: sabotage. Small resistance groups, led by surviving soldiers and guerrilla fighters, began striking at vulnerable Sharkan supply lines. There was no chance of defeating the invaders directly. Instead, humanity would chip away at the aliens' infrastructure, buying precious time for a larger counteroffensive. The first success came in the form of a daring raid on a Sharkan refueling station orbiting Mars. It was a desperate plan. 24 human pilots, flying makeshift, stolen ships cobbled together from whatever they could find, set off toward the heavily guarded station. They knew they had no chance of survival, but that was never the point. It was a message, a defiant message that Earth wasn't going down without a fight. The human fighters, using the cover of asteroid fields, breached the station's perimeter, engaging in a fierce dogfight with the Sharkan's defensive fleet. For hours, the human pilots outmaneuvered the aliens with tactics that were unpredictable, chaotic, things that were almost impossible for the highly regimented Sharkan to anticipate. It was humanity's greatest strength, the ability to adapt, to think on the fly when the odds were stacked against them. Against all expectations, the humans succeeded in planting explosives on the refueling station's core, sending it into a catastrophic detonation that temporarily crippled the Sharkan's operations in the solar system. The victory was small, but it sent shockwaves through the alien ranks. The Sharkan, who had believed humanity to be helpless, were forced to reassess. Back on Earth, Kincaid's face hardened as the news of the raid reached her. The human resistance had struck a significant blow, but this was just the beginning. Earth had only one chance to prove its worth, an all-or-nothing gamble that would take everything humanity had. A global summit was called, and for the first time, the nations of the world put aside their differences. They shared technology, pooled resources, and launched their most brilliant minds into the effort to create something, anything, that could challenge the alien invaders. In a secret lab located deep within the Rocky Mountains, a team of engineers led by Dr. Lucia Wren, a renowned weapons specialist, worked around the clock. For weeks, they combed through the wreckage of Sharkan ships, reverse engineering every piece of alien technology they could get their hands on. After countless failures and false starts, a breakthrough came. A new type of energy weapon that could disrupt the Sharkan's nearly indestructible shields. With this new weapon ready for deployment, Kincaid knew that the time had come. Earth had to strike while the Sharkan were still reeling from the surprise raid. The battle for humanity's survival had just begun. But the aliens had underestimated one crucial factor, the relentless ingenuity of humanity. And the Sharkan were about to learn that human creativity in the face of impossible odds was far more dangerous than they could have ever imagined. Cliffhanger. As Earth prepares for its first full-scale counterattack, the Sharkan's supreme commander, Jara, begins to grow wary of the humans' unexpected resilience. She orders a devastating new weapon to be deployed, one that will test humanity's defenses like never before. As humanity's first victory sent ripples of hope through Earth's population, the Sharkan responded with brutal efficiency. Their supreme commander, Jara, had underestimated the resilience of a species she had considered primitive. But now she knew the humans were far more than a nuisance. They had fought back, and worse, they had made a dent in the Sharkan's flawless reputation. In the command center of the Sharkan flagship, Jara stood before a massive holographic display, her red eyes burning with determination. "Increase the pressure on them," she ordered. "Make them understand that resistance is futile." She was no longer content with simple bombardment. It was time to break the will of the human resistance once and for all. The alien war machine shifted its focus. Rather than further isolating Earth from the rest of the galaxy, the Sharkan deployed an overwhelming force, intent on landing their ground forces and crushing the human military with a single decisive blow. Massive transport ships descended into Earth's atmosphere, each carrying an army of the Sharkan's fearsome soldiers, beasts of war capable of tearing through any resistance. On Earth's surface, General Emma Kincaid had no illusions about the scale of the fight ahead. The alien fleet had decimated the planet's defenses, but humanity had learned from the raid on Mars. If they were to survive, they couldn't fight the Sharkan on their terms. They had to adapt. Kincaid's first move was to leverage Earth's greatest asset, its people. Soldiers from every corner of the globe, from every nation, rallied to a single cause: survival. While the Sharkan focused on their war machines, humanity's soldiers took to the streets, engaging in guerrilla tactics that the invaders were ill-prepared for. It wasn't a battle of raw power, it was a battle of wits. Earth's forces had one advantage the Sharkan could not understand: unpredictability. In every city, human fighters set traps, ambushed supply convoys, and targeted the weak points of the alien forces. In the war-torn streets of Paris, human resistance fighters dug into abandoned subway tunnels, launching surprise attacks that disrupted Sharkan ground troops. In Tokyo, civilian forces, armed with improvised weapons, sabotaged alien landing craft in tight alleyways, causing chaos and confusion. But it wasn't enough to stop the tide of war. As the Sharkan's elite soldiers began to land, humanity was forced to take a more direct approach. General Kincaid knew they had to fight back on a scale never before attempted. At dawn, Earth's forces launched a full-scale assault on the alien landing zone. Fighter jets soared through the sky, their weapons blasting through the shields of the alien transport ships. Earth's forces used the newly developed energy weapons, which, though far from perfect, were able to strip away the invaders' shields for brief moments, allowing human forces to strike with newfound courage. The skies above Earth were a maelstrom of gunfire and explosions as humanity fought for its survival. On the ground, though, it was chaos. The alien soldiers, hulking, vicious creatures, cut through human forces with terrifying efficiency. But for every fallen soldier, for every casualty, the human resistance only grew stronger. They knew this was their only shot. Either they won, or humanity ceased to exist. Just when it seemed the humans were losing ground, a massive explosion rocked the alien forces. A human fighter squadron, using the modified Sharkan weapons, managed to disable the energy shields of an entire battalion of alien walkers. The alien beasts collapsed in flames, and human soldiers surged forward, regrouping and pushing back the Sharkan ground forces for the first time. But the Sharkan weren't done. From their massive warships, they unleashed the next phase of their assault: the Omega Beam. Cliffhanger. As the energy beam cuts through the sky, the world holds its breath. Humanity's fragile victory may be short-lived. The arrival of the Omega Beam was nothing short of catastrophic. Its destructive power was beyond anything humanity had ever imagined. An energy weapon capable of obliterating entire cities with a single strike. As the beam cut through the sky, vaporizing a large portion of the landscape, Earth's defenses crumbled. New York City, once a beacon of human achievement, was reduced to a smoldering ruin in a matter of minutes. The alien forces, now empowered with this devastating weapon, began to tighten their grip on Earth. But amidst the chaos and despair, humanity's defining trait, its creativity, began to shine through. In the midst of the rubble, General Emma Kincaid and her team made an incredible decision: to build something that the Sharkan would never expect. Earth's military forces were struggling, but the one thing the aliens had failed to consider was the human capacity to adapt, innovate, and think in ways that their rigid, technologically superior minds could never replicate. In secret underground labs, engineers and scientists worked tirelessly, reverse engineering the weapons and technology left behind in the wake of Sharkan attacks. They examined the remnants of the Omega Beam, studied its energy patterns, and after days of sleepless work, they created the Pulse Disruptor, a weapon capable of short-circuiting the Sharkan's shields for a brief moment, rendering their advanced technology vulnerable. The Pulse Disruptor was humanity's first real weapon of hope. Although it was far from perfect, its potential was clear. If they could hit the alien fleet with this new weapon, Even briefly, it would give Earth's forces the opening they needed to strike back. The first test of the pulse disruptor was set for an impending invasion force. The Xarkan were preparing to send their full fleet to Earth's southern hemisphere, likely to finish what they had started. Humanity could not afford to lose any more ground. Under Kincaid's orders, a small group of human engineers and soldiers embarked on a daring mission to deploy the pulse disruptor atop a remote mountain range in the Andes, where the Xarkan fleet would pass over in less than 24 hours. It was a dangerous mission, one that required stealth, precise timing, and courage. As the team made its way into the heart of enemy territory, every step felt like a gamble. The pulse disruptor was the last hope humanity had of turning the tide. And if they failed, it could mean the end of Earth. They had no time to waste. When the day of the assault arrived, humanity's fighters, equipped with the new pulse disruptor, launched their strike. At the same time, resistance forces around the world began coordinated attacks on Xarkan supply lines, drawing the aliens' attention away from the larger operation. In the skies above the Andes, a squadron of human jets, carrying the pulse disruptors, lined up for their attack. As the Xarkan fleet, unaware of what was coming, entered their firing range, humanity's jets launched the first attack. The pulse disruptors fired, sending powerful electromagnetic bursts that cascaded through the alien ships. For the first time, Xarkan shields flickered and fell, allowing human missiles to strike true. Explosions ripped through the alien vessels, and debris rained down over the mountains. It was a victory, small but powerful. The human forces, now armed with a weapon that could disable the alien ships, found new hope. The tide had begun to turn. But the Xarkan were not going to simply sit back and let this setback pass. Cliffhanger. Commander Zhara, watching from her flagship, snarled in fury. The humans had breached their defenses. It was time for a more drastic measure. She gave the order to deploy their final weapon, one that would leave no room for mercy. The pulse disruptor had proven to be humanity's greatest weapon, but it also exposed the fatal flaw in the Xarkan's arrogance. They had believed their technology was invincible, their war machines unbeatable. But Earth had struck a blow, and now the aliens were scrambling to respond. Commander Zhara, her face a mask of cold fury, watched from the command center of her flagship as the pulse disruptor had torn through her fleet. It was clear now that the humans were not just surviving. They were learning, adapting, and worse, they had developed a weapon that could shift the balance of power. With her patience running thin, Zhara made a decision that would change the course of the war forever. She ordered the deployment of the Abyssal Bomb, a weapon of unimaginable power, hidden in the deepest reaches of the Xarkan fleet. The Abyssal Bomb was a supermassive energy device, capable of ripping the fabric of space-time itself. If detonated, it would create a singularity, a black hole capable of swallowing the entire planet. No shield, no defense, nothing would survive its destruction. It was a final solution, one that would obliterate Earth and its resistance in one cataclysmic event. The Xarkan warships began to mobilize, their fleets converging above Earth. While humanity's forces tried to regroup, General Kincaid knew that the Xarkan's new weapon could not be allowed to reach full power. If the Abyssal Bomb detonated, the war would be over, not just for humanity, but for every living thing on Earth. For the first time since the beginning of the invasion, Earth's leaders felt the weight of total extinction bearing down on them. Kincaid's mind raced. How could humanity possibly stop such a weapon? It was then that a breakthrough arrived, not from the front lines of battle, but from the last place anyone expected. Dr. Lucia Wren, the brilliant engineer behind the pulse disruptor, had been studying alien technology for months, attempting to understand the true capabilities of the Xarkan. She realized something crucial. The Abyssal Bomb was not just a destructive weapon. It required an immense amount of energy to function, and its detonation sequence was complex and vulnerable. Wren and her team set to work, analyzing the bomb's energy signature and devising a plan to disable it. But there was no room for error. If they failed, Earth would be lost. The plan was simple but perilous. A small, elite squadron of human fighters would infiltrate the Sharkan's fleet, bypassing the aliens' defenses using stealth technology. Once inside, they would disable the energy core of the abyssal bomb before it could be activated. To accomplish this, the squadron would need to deploy a hacking virus directly into the ship's mainframe, shutting down the bomb's energy channels from within. The mission was a suicide run, but humanity had no choice. With the pulse disruptor as their only form of counteroffensive, Earth's last hope lay in this one final attempt to prevent Armageddon. As the human squadron prepared for their desperate assault, General Kincaid addressed them. "This mission may be the end for all of us, but you are the last line of defense. If you succeed, Earth survives. If you fail, Earth is lost. We fight together, no matter what." The squadron launched, moving silently through the dark void of space as the Sharkan fleet loomed menacingly ahead. Each fighter knew that this would be their final flight, but their resolve was unshakable. They were fighting not just for survival, but for the future of humanity itself. Cliffhanger. As they approached the Sharkan flagship, the eerie hum of the abyssal bomb could be heard in the distance, its energy building toward catastrophe. The human squadron was closing in, but would they be able to stop it in time? The squadron of human fighters, now just a small speck against the vast expanse of the Sharkan fleet, approached the heart of the alien armada with steely determination. Time was running out. The abyssal bomb, hidden somewhere on the Sharkan flagship, was nearly ready to be activated. Its hum was becoming more pronounced, its energy building to a level that would tear apart everything in its path. Each member of the elite squadron had their own reason for volunteering for this deadly mission. Some had lost family, others had seen cities reduced to ash, and a few simply refused to let the Sharkan win. They were humanity's last hope, and they knew it. "Focus on the objective." General Kincaid's voice crackled over the comms, steady and resolute. "You've trained for this. You're not just fighting for survival anymore. You're fighting for all of us." The human fighters were equipped with stealth technology that, while rudimentary compared to the Sharkan's advanced systems, would allow them to avoid detection for a limited time. The key was timing. If they could infiltrate the Sharkan flagship before its defenses had fully locked onto them, they might just stand a chance. But they had no backup, no reinforcements. It was a one-way mission, and failure meant annihilation. As they neared the flagship, their scanners lit up with incoming fire, but the cloaking devices held strong, keeping them invisible for now. The squadron leader, Captain Rhea Solis, kept her hand steady on the controls, her heart pounding in her chest. The plan was simple: slip through the flagship's outer defenses, land inside its docking bay, and proceed to the bomb's location. There, they would plant a virus to disable its core. The Sharkan flagship was a vast, imposing structure with jagged black spires reaching into space. As they approached the enormous hangar bays, the squadron held their breath, praying their cloaking technology held. A sudden shudder rattled their ships as a few stray shots barely missed them. Captain Solis pushed forward with a quiet, "We can do this." Then, a breakthrough. The flagship's docking bay doors began to open. Solis directed the squadron through the opening, just as alarms began to blare within the ship. Their stealth devices were about to fail. They had moments left before the Sharkan realized they were inside. "We're in," Captain Solis whispered. The fighters touched down in the massive darkened hangar, where Sharkan soldiers patrolled in a seemingly endless line. Solis and her team disembarked, their heavy boots making no sound as they hurried through the darkened corridors. The ship's interior was labyrinthine, filled with alien technology that seemed both organic and mechanical, a fusion of biology and engineering that unnerved even the most experienced soldiers. The squadron advanced cautiously, relying on their training to avoid detection. Their objective was clear: reach the control room, bypass the security systems, and upload the virus. The atmosphere aboard the ship was tense. Each corner could hold an ambush. But the humans were ready. Suddenly, Their scanners lit up. Sharkan soldiers were nearby. A squadron of armored invaders turned a corner, and in a heartbeat, they locked eyes with the human fighters. The ensuing battle was brief but brutal. The Sharkan warriors, with their enhanced strength and fearsome combat skills, overwhelmed the squadron momentarily, forcing them into a desperate retreat. But the humans refused to back down. With a series of precise shots, they took out the alien soldiers one by one, narrowly escaping the ambush. "We can't keep doing this." Solis gritted her teeth, her voice full of resolve. "We need to reach the core now. Time's running out." They pushed forward, closer to the heart of the ship. The distant rumble of the abyssal bomb's energy buildup echoed through the halls, a constant reminder of the deadly threat looming above them. Cliffhanger. The squadron reached the central chamber, the location of the abyssal bomb's control core. But as they prepared to upload the virus, the entire room lit up with an eerie red glow. The countdown had begun. The chamber was silent except for the steady hum of the abyssal bomb's core, its energy pulse building with terrifying force. A deep red glow illuminated the room, casting long, jagged shadows on the walls as the squadron of human fighters positioned themselves around the central control unit. The countdown had begun, ticking down toward Earth's inevitable destruction. Captain Rhea Solis clenched her fists, her mind racing. They had made it this far, but now came the hardest part. The virus, designed by Dr. Lucia Wren, had to be uploaded into the bomb's core, and it had to be done precisely, or the entire mission would be for nothing. The bomb's internal security systems were ruthless. The slightest mistake would trigger an immediate lockdown, sealing their fates. "Move quickly," Solis ordered, her voice a whisper. Her squadron members, each with their own personal stakes in this fight, nodded in unison. They had no room for hesitation. This was the final step. The control core was a mass of alien technology, covered in intricate symbols that pulsed with the same eerie red glow as the rest of the ship. It was nothing like anything they had seen before, but they had no choice. They had to make it work. Lieutenant Takashi Kuroda, the squadron's tech specialist, moved to the console, his hand shaking, but his resolve unwavering. He plugged the small data port containing the virus into the control panel, and a series of holographic interfaces flickered to life. His eyes scanned the screen, looking for the precise point of entry. "We have one shot at this," Kuroda muttered under his breath, sweat dripping down his face as he worked. "If I'm off by even a fraction, we're done." Outside the chamber, the sound of hurried footsteps echoed down the corridors. Sharkan soldiers were closing in, alerted by the breach in their security. Solis heard the sound of their growls, deep, guttural, and ferocious, as they readied for a final assault. Time was running out. "Upload initiated," Kuroda announced, a note of tension creeping into his voice. The interface hummed to life, and the virus began to breach the bomb's internal systems, but it was taking longer than expected. "Faster, Takashi," Solis urged, her breath quickening. "They're almost here." The hum of the core intensified as the countdown reached the final minute. Every second felt like an eternity. The virus continued to worm its way through the bomb's defenses, and for a moment, it seemed as if it might fail. But then, click. The panel blinked, and a low mechanical whine sounded from the core. "It's working," Kuroda exclaimed. But just as the virus began to rewrite the bomb's programming, the chamber doors exploded open. A squad of Sharkan soldiers stormed into the room, their weapons raised and their eyes glowing with murderous intent. The humans didn't have time to react. The Sharkan charge. Solis was the first to fire, her blaster ripping through the air as she dropped one of the invaders in a single shot. The others followed suit, unleashing a barrage of fire in an attempt to buy Kuroda the time he needed. The gunfire echoed through the chamber, the Sharkan's shrill roars mixing with the explosion of energy from their weapons. Kuroda's hands flew across the console, his eyes darting between the incoming soldiers and the final steps of the virus upload. "Just a few more seconds," he shouted. But there was no time left. A blast from a Sharkan weapon struck the console, sending sparks flying. The chamber began to shake violently as the bomb's countdown reached its final seconds. "Do it now," Solus shouted, firing until her energy cells ran dry. She grabbed a nearby plasma grenade, hurling it toward the advancing aliens, buying them a few precious seconds. Cliffhanger. The countdown hit 0. But instead of an explosion, there was a sudden, deafening silence. The bomb's core emitted a low, vibrating hum. And then, a shockwave of energy exploded outward, sending the squadron hurtling backward. Had the virus worked? Had they averted the disaster? Or had they triggered something far worse? The shockwave sent the human fighters sprawling to the ground, their bodies slamming against the cold, metal floor of the chamber. For a moment, everything was still. The red glow of the abyssal bomb's core pulsed ominously, as if taunting them in their moment of uncertainty. Smoke and dust filled the air, and the room was flooded with a ringing silence, broken only by the sound of ragged breathing from the squadron. Captain Solus blinked, her vision blurry. Her head throbbed from the impact, and she struggled to push herself to her feet. Her eyes locked onto the control panel, where Kuroda had been working just moments before. Was it over? Had the bomb detonated? No. Kuroda's voice came through the haze, shaky but determined. It stopped. The countdown. It stopped. Solus staggered toward him, still dizzy from the blast, and peered at the console. The interface now flickered in a strange, erratic pattern. The energy levels of the abyssal bomb, once rising toward catastrophic levels, were now fluctuating wildly. But most importantly, it had ceased its countdown. There was no explosion, no world-shattering destruction. For the first time since the squadron entered the flagship, the room was quiet. "It worked?" Solus asked, hardly daring to believe it. She could scarcely take in the sight before her, the bomb no longer threatening the destruction of Earth. "We did it," Kuroda confirmed, a sense of disbelief in his voice. He wiped sweat from his brow and looked up at the screen. "The virus. It's rewritten the core's programming. The bomb's energy is now dissipating, and it's shutting down." The squadron members exchanged incredulous glances. Against all odds, they had succeeded. The mission that had once seemed impossible was now a victory that would change the course of the war. But the fight wasn't over yet. The Sharkan soldiers, though momentarily stunned by the failure of their weapon, had not given up. They were still closing in on the chamber, their snarls and growls growing louder as they readied for another assault. "Get to the ship," Solus ordered, her voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through her veins. "Now. We're not done yet. We need to get back to Earth." But before they could move, the doors of the chamber slammed open. More Sharkan warriors flooded into the room, their eyes burning with rage. The humans had only moments to escape before they were overwhelmed. "We're not going down without a fight," Solus muttered under her breath. Solus, Kuroda, and the rest of the squadron engaged the incoming alien forces, their weapons crackling with energy as they fired in precise bursts. The Sharkan advanced relentlessly, their numbers far greater than the human squad. Yet, every shot from the humans found its mark, as if the weight of their victory was giving them strength. They were not just fighting for their lives, but for the future of every living being on Earth. They had to hold on, just a little longer. Solus tossed another plasma grenade, clearing a path toward the hangar where their ship waited. "Move. Move. Now." The humans sprinted through the chaos, fighting off the last wave of aliens as they reached the ship. The doors slid shut behind them, and their pilot, Lieutenant Mia Jackson, wasted no time. She gummed the engines, and the ship shot upward, tearing through the Sharkan flagship's defenses as they made their escape. As they pulled away, the humans looked back at the colossal ship, now crippled. The abyssal bomb had been neutralized, but the Sharkan fleet was not yet broken. There was still a long road ahead. But for the first time in a long time, humanity had something the aliens could never take away: Hope. The human spirit had endured. The fight was far from over, but Earth had not been conquered. Not today. Cliffhanger. As the human ship entered the safety of Earth's atmosphere, a chilling transmission came through. Commander Jera's voice, cold and calculating, echoed across the comms. This is not over. You have only delayed the inevitable. Prepare yourselves for the true reckoning.